Today is Tuesday, June 3rd, and you're listening to the Beer Temple Podcast.
Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again.
Hello, and welcome to the Beer Temple Podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike Shalau of Is Was Brewing, and I'm here with, you would never guess, honorary Fade Master and your other co-host, Chris Quinn of the Beer Temple. Chris, how you doing? That fade.
Perfect fade. I'm sure it's going to last throughout the show. History has shown that I usually execute these flawlessly.
That was almost as hot as it is here today.
It is hot. It's hot in this room.
It is hot in this room. There's no HVAC in this room.
You don't say. Anyway, it's still very nice and very much look forward to, I think, in Chicago at this time of year for it to be warm, this warm at least, and not as warm as like Central Coast California was this weekend. I would imagine. We'll find out about that in a moment because I'd have to say, will this be the last show we ever record, Mike? Will there be anything left after this show? I don't know.
I don't know.
Probably not. We've done it all.
Yeah, we've done. This is the pinnacle of this is what this has been building towards this entire time.
Right. Exactly. Very special guest. Two very special guests actually, and I think we should probably get right into it after you tell me, just in brief, anything new with you.
I'm fighting for my life right now, Chris. I have had very bad allergies my entire life, and we found an antihistamine that worked, but I decided to get allergy shots. And what that means is that for the next week, I can't take my antihistamine, and I am struggling.
Got it.
And on top of that, I was supposed to be on WGN today. Got pushed back a week. So now it's the day after my allergy shots when I haven't been on antihistamines for 7 days, and I'm not allowed to shower. So... and they insisted on having our artist on, who is a yoked 6'9" guy. Yeah. So I'm going to look like a 4-foot troll that you have to answer riddles to get across a bridge.
And people will be, throughout the interview, like slowly stepping further away from you.
Yeah.
I love also that you're using, like, my doctor told me I can't shower. Yeah, it sounds like something my kid would say. So good luck with getting people to believe that.
I requested that they get Joe, our artist, a box, so he's not even in frame. I'm standing on a box.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but
Thanks.
I'm sure
it's a wild feeling.
Why are you going on TV?
We're promoting the Raven. What's the Malt Row event? You
better get this down. This is going to be tomorrow.
Damon, no, it's not.
Are you on it too, Jude?
Ravenswood on Tap.
Ravens in June.
Yeah, in July.
Yeah,
they're having a bunch of people on to promote that, I think.
Got it.
No one said that explicitly.
Yeah, Mike was at the meeting,
and we should.
I was not at the meeting.
You were on your honeymoon, I think.
I
was back. I was handling some situations here that were unfortunate.
We are recording from Studio IW today.
That's right.
So you'll hear the hustle and bustle of the happenings. You won't be as, like, at the Beer Temple, people are constantly writing in about how annoying the sound of our AC system is in the background. You won't have to deal with that here.
See, you might hear that because the return for the AC in the other
better.
room is in here. So now
all the sound, none of the cooling air.
You'll hear the glycol chiller click on every once in a while and the AC. So if you can write in and tell us which one is which, you get a Dust T-shirt.
Ooh, good, good.
That I'm sure we still have in stock.
Yes. Well, let's. We have a couple guests that we should get to. We always introduce our guests by order. The only order that makes sense for us. Oh, you got a train around here too?
Yeah, it's the Metro. It's fast.
Got it.
It's the way to really fly, as they used to say.
So we introduce our guests in order of seniority, that being how many times they've been on the show, the tiebreaker is how many GABF or World Beer Cup medals they've won, but we haven't gotten to that. So it's just how many times they've been on the show, luckily. So our senior guest today is Mr. Jude
Rose.
Nailed
it, Chris.
Yes. Needed a little help this time, but how are you?
I'm great.
What have you been up to?
Stoked to be here. Well, first things first, I want to say that that fade looked smooth.
Oh, yeah.
It sounded smooth, but it looked smooth.
It took all my concentration.
Looked great. Mike, we can talk about HVAC systems all day. Just put a lot of work into our tap rooms one, which also we could talk about. Do you have the AC running when you have some doors open? That's another conversation, controversial in the tap room right now.
Right.
We could talk about that offline. Curious.
Are
Are you?
Casino.
It's like your dad. Here's the question: are we cooling the outside? I don't know. Are we?
We did have
are.
the privilege of having our HVAC guy come out to check out our brewery cooler, which has a refrigerant leak that required 19 pounds of refrigerant.
Whoa.
So,
That's
I'm just
cheap.
printing money
that's the
left
good
and
thing.
right. And he was here for 7 hours total over the course of 2 days.
Labor's
$200
cheap.
an
Labor's
hour.
cheap these days.
It's cheaper. Yep. Yeah. It's been great.
Cool.
Having a good week.
Hey, you know what? We're all just learning. We're getting more experience under our belt.
These are good problems.
Yeah.
These are all good problems, Mike. Buying 19 pounds of refrigerant is a good problem.
That's what you want.
Because now you have 19 pounds. So
You know
what
what,
have you
though?
been up to, Jude?
Just got back from the Firestone Walker Invitational.
You don't say.
Amazing time.
How hot was it out there?
It was 102 degrees, so we flew into San
It's a
Francisco.
dry heat, though.
That's what my wife kept asking. It's a dry heat, though, right? But the gnarly thing is, you fly into San Francisco, and then you drive about 3 hours south, and it's
Whoops.
I'm throwing my voice across
Yeah.
all the.
Sorry.
I've been practicing.
I told you it was going to go flawless with me on air.
What's great though
Yeah.
is as you're driving south to Paso Robles, there's a time that the temp starts to like just up a notch, like every 2 degrees, every 2 minutes.
Yeah,
You're seeing it go from 76 to 80. You see 86, and you say, guys, look at the GPS. You're gonna see, and then it's 92, 95.
At first it's cool, and then it becomes probably not cool.
the windows are
Literally.
hot. The windows are hot when you touch them. But it's an amazing time. It is like almost overwhelming, like the number of great breweries, great beers in an idyllic setting. There's just so many conversations you want to have, so many beers you want to try. Everyone's bringing their A game, and they do just such an amazing job of like curating experience for all the brewers and all the festival goers.
All right, 2 beers that you found exceptional out there.
So I went to, so it wasn't at the fest, but to stop in Capitola and stop at Sante was, like that was a first. So to have Bernice on draft there was great. The Half Acre crew was already there, so that was cool. We were on the flight with them on the way down.
You guys fly private, right?
Yes, totally. It's the
NetJets.
what's it called? What's that airport? The executive airport, right? That's
Yeah,
where we all
know.
Yep.
We all know that
Yep.
one.
I heard you
The
got
one that we
picked up
fly
off
into.
the helipad on top of the Bedford.
We
brewery.
also have a helicopter. Yeah, we have a helipad on top of our brewery
No,
on the south side.
I hovercraft.
It's all funded by Citra.
It's back from the jewelers.
Yeah.
That's good.
I haven't tried it yet, but hopefully it's working.
Is it bejeweled?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, then that's what you want.
Well, no, the actual moving components are also jeweled, like in a watch.
Yeah, right.
So I have to see if it works. All right, so that was one.
You know, the
second beer.
Okay,
2.
so we've all had really good heady top in our lives before, but lately I feel like a couple cans that I've gotten. There's this one time I was at the beer cellar, and I always drop the beer
I'm
cellar.
going to say the last couple times I've had it, it's been a little underwhelming.
It's very like girthy. I feel like dirty,
Yes,
like
yes,
Galaxy, like
yes.
just like real kind of gritty and choppy, and
Yes.
it's not what I know of it. What I remember of it at least, as this like fluffy, delicate, like
Yes.
New England style hoppy beer. But they poured it, and it looked so. It usually has like an orange tint to it. It looked so clean, and it looked a lot
yellow?
brighter.
Okay, yeah.
And it drank so much cleaner. And I was like, this isn't even the same beer. And I asked them, and I think what it is too is they said like they don't like keg that much.
Oh.
They don't keg
But
that
you had it
much.
on keg?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they don't keg that much heady topper. It was something like that, but I was like, this is so clean.
And it was good.
It sounds like a lame answer to say heady topper, but I was just,
No.
I've had weird experiences with it recently, and it was just so unbelievably good.
Cool.
It was so good. I would say those two. It's a festival that everyone brings their A game, so it's like
Yeah, for
I don't
sure.
know,
What did you guys bring?
we brought
B game.
we brought yes.
We have a B game. We have a beer. It's called B Game. We brought it. That would be funny to bring to one of those festivals. Brew a beer called B Game.
Here's our second-rate beers. We brought a hazy double IPA with Rawaka, Simcoe Hyper Boost, and Citra. That was really cool to satisfy like 7.5% hazy double IPA. We brought a dope beer called Flow, which was my favorite
Cat
of
movie?
ours. Pardon me?
Like the cat movie?
Like FLOE. It is. I just saw that recently too.
It's a good movie.
So that's a sheet of ice, a floating sheet of ice.
Oh,
Right?
Yeah.
So that has some real good crush, some Citra, some gassy Nectaron, and it had some Mosaic, West Coast IPA 7.25%, and then hazy.
Hold on. The beer named after an ice flow wasn't like a cold IPA
You
with
would
all
think so.
cryo hops?
But you know the best part about that is Kevin Davey would come up to the booth at some point in the afternoon and grab a flow and drink it. So the
Nice.
one that inspired us all to brew cold IPA.
This is all well and good, but I would like to get to our.
Yeah, yeah.
You're right to it. All right.
guest.
Yeah, I just went a
No,
little
you're.
long. You're
Yeah,
right.
no,
The guest
great
of honor.
place. I care about your beers a
It's
lot.
amazing.
I care what
You
you're
asked the
pouring.
question what
I
we were
did.
pouring. So
It's called being polite. That's like when someone says, "How are you doing?" You're not supposed to really say how you're doing. You're
Yep.
supposed to say just
Well, you
great.
say living the dream, and then
Living
you go
the
home
dream.
and think about,
Yeah. Yeah.
all the things you've done wrong.
The nightmare.
I'm done
Yeah.
here.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks for coming on, Jude. Always great having you.
Wouldn't want to be
Now
anywhere
shut
else.
up.
This is my second podcast of the day, by the way.
Oh,
Is it
wow.
really?
Yeah.
All right.
Make
Well,
us feel special.
Yeah, I drove all the way into the city for it.
our next guest, first time guest, and the deal is first time guests introduce themselves. So if you wouldn't mind, could you please tell us who you are and what you do?
Hey guys, well, thanks for having me. My name is Matt Cole. I'm the partner brewmaster at Fatheads Brewing Company.
We did.
I've been around since 2009 and slowly progressed into being a larger regional brewery, focused on, quality and hop-driven products. And yeah, it's great to be here. And, I'd love to share a little bit of our adventure along the way. And we're still in that pursuit of perfection,
Sweet. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's a little bit, I don't know, Matt, if you've ever seen the old SNL skit of Chris Farley on the Chris Farley Show, but there's going to be a lot of that with us, just being like, remember when you won all those gold medals? That was awesome.
That was awesome. Remember when you guys made Headhunter like every time?
Yeah.
It's awesome every time.
Yeah.
was sick.
So, yeah, no, it's, as I clued you into a little bit ahead of time, Mike and I especially, but Jude, of course, as well. Big Headhunter fans. I have gone on the record saying it is my favorite IPA in the world. So I'm gonna. Are you drinking one right now? What are you drinking right now, Matt?
I also have a headhunter.
Oh, of course.
You got to. Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? Yeah, right.
Yeah, that or Benjamin
You guys
Danklin.
packaged
Yeah.
like yesterday.
Nice. Yep. I'm the guy when I.
Heat.
So I'm from Philadelphia, and when I drive home, it's funny. We always take the route that goes through Middleburg Heights. We just happen to
the
to go
most
through
direct
that
route.
way. It's the most direct route.
Two fatheads.
And yeah, I'll go in there, and I'll be the one like holding up. Like, are the 6-packs or the 6-packs were canned 4 days ago, but the 12-packs were 3 days ago. Guess I gotta get 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to get 12. Mm-hmm. Then on the way back, you also stop in because you drank those 12.
Yeah, those are the going out ones. Then I stock up on the way in.
That's right.
On the way
I
back.
really
should
don't
say.
think you guys are going to be able to. We can't do another podcast after this. This is going
What
to
I
be.
said, is this
I
it?
know this is going to be the pinnacle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
This
all
is
downhill.
the only guest we've ever wanted.
Yeah, and we're gonna give you some
Sorry to
shit in a little
other
bit
guests.
because you've been dodging us, and we're not gonna let you get away from that because we've been asking for a couple of years.
That's
to have
right.
you on and laughing about how
Very annoyingly.
your staff has been like, nah, I don't think he's interested. So, and I also, as I told you before, when you get off, you'll understand why.
Why?
You'll thank them.
You'll be like, yeah, you guys were right.
Yeah.
These guys are idiots.
So, I mean, the history of Headhunter, I'm sorry, of Fatheads is an interesting one, and it to me, what I really find interesting about you guys is how well you. I guess the stereotype of back in the day was like brewers started as home brewers, like pro brewers started as home brewers, and that's kind of where they got the itch. And is that the case with you, Matt? Is that kind of where you started off things with a home brewing background?
Well, I think it's originally started with just I got my hands on maybe Sierra Nevada and Pete's Wicked Ale and a couple of those beers, when I was probably 19 or 20. And I think that was probably like, some of the influential beers where like I was like, wow, I didn't realize beer had flavor like this. So that's really kind of where it all started for me. And I quickly like dove into craft beer. I think by 1992, I was actually working in a brewery. So,
Oh, wow.
I took the fast track to homebrew about my sophomore year of college. And then really, I think within, 2 years and 92, I had more of a sales job. It was like a student sales job when I was going to the University of Pittsburgh, working for the Pennsylvania Brewing Company. And it just gave me, my idea back then was to, build a resume and, have some work experience. And then along the way, like I started to get intrigued with the brew house and the smells and the mechanics and all these things. And so eventually I was like, well, this might be actually something that I want to pursue as a career. And I think by like 1995, I had attended the Siebel short course.
Okay.
Yeah. So pretty early on, I guess I kind of have beer in my blood, and I really took a liking to craft.
And you started in Pittsburgh and then moved to Ohio.
Yeah, so around the same time in 1992, when I was, pursuing, the brewing side of it, my partner Glenn was had a beer bar in the south side of Pittsburgh, and so the brewery that I was working at was supplying him with a fair amount of beer, and I was getting to know a lot about the beer scene in the Pittsburgh market, and so like I was in Pittsburgh during that whole time. He was starting his company. And, there over years, then I moved and, did more studies and then ended up at Great Lakes and Baltimore Brewing Company. And anyway, I ended up back in the Cleveland market, and that's kind of how it all got going.
Got it.
It kind of goes back to Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh brewing roots.
Right. I remember like hearing about Fatheads from from when it was in Pittsburgh. And me being a kind of like, what was it, beer advocate, kind of beer geek and reading, and you'd have, these well-regarded IPAs from all over the country, and most of them would be like Colorado, California, East Coast ones, at the time there was, Dogfish Head and stuff like that. And then there was Fatheads from Pittsburgh, and I was curious to get my hands on it. And then the first time I had it, I liked it. I don't remember the first time I had it and was like,
yeah. So some of those earlier years in the early '90s, they did some contract brewing. Like there's actually a beer that was called Head Trip, and that was made by Van Steenberg.
Okay.
Rogue made them a amber ale of some sort, like under a private label and things like that. So they had a few of their own beers that were like private label stuff, but
for the bar before it was full on brewery.
Yeah.
Right?
So nothing really got brewed until we started brewing here in 2009.
Okay. And then when did Headhunter first come out?
Well, that was, I think, my third or fourth brew that I did when we first opened or started operations.
So what
back
year
in
would have that?
2000
Okay. Sorry.
2009. So it would have been March of 2009 is when I would have brewed Headhunter for the first time. And and it went on to be obviously our flagship beer.
Sure. And was that beer, like, did you have any, I mean, I know it says on the can that it's a West Coast IPA, but at the time, do you even remember at the time that you brewed it, what were you modeling it or being inspired by anything or something you were trying to hit in particular?
I've said it before. I think Vinny had a recipe in a Zermagy that I think was on Pliny the Elder. No, younger. It was a younger. But I kind of looked at that recipe and I looked at the layers of hops and when they went in. And I took some of what he had written or contributed, I guess, to the magazine and implemented some of that stuff with different varietals at different times and try to kind of just use that model of layering hops at the beginning of the boil, the 45, the 20, the end of the boil, dry hopping twice sometimes, and that was back then, that was 15, 16 years ago, that was a little different.
Yeah, for sure.
It was a little bit more pushing the envelope. So that was part of the inspiration. And then there's a lot of other breweries that have influenced, but and I think it really has a lot to do with when we first started to get access to Simcoe. I think that really elevated, that beer. That changed its whole flavor profile. And I remember I was a tiny brewery, but I would fight to get 5,000 and 6,000 pounds of it, back then. So.
Do you remember how that first beer turned out? And was there anything like you really liked about it? And was there anything that you wanted to change
first
about
Headhunter?
it? Yeah.
So the first Headhunter, I remember it oxidized really, really, really quickly, and I long story short, I wasn't cleaning my tanks under a environment that was going to prevent oxidation, and it was getting tired fast. But within the first 4 or 5 batches of it, I was actually at the Great Taste of the Midwest. We had sent it to the Bistro IPA festival, and I get a call from Vic that said we had won gold. And so it was only our 4th time we ever brewed it, and it won the West Coast IPA Festival. So that was holy fuck, we're onto something here. We started brewing a lot more. We added dropped-in tanks, and then in 2010 we won in the Great American Beer Festival, and then we won again in 11, and then we won again in 12 at World Beer Cup, and then we won again in 14. And it just kind of was okay, this is starting to really steamroll into classic IPA, I guess.
Now, and as you're winning all these medals and everything, my instinct as a brewer is to still tinker with what we're making, even if it's a good thing. How much has that beer been tinkered with, and how much is kind of once you got that good crop of Simcoe, you're oh, this beer is pretty locked in. We're just going to ride this for the next 200 years. Yeah.
It really has evolved. I mean, I probably could spend a whole entire show
That's what
explaining
we're here
to you
for.
how it has actually evolved over the last 16 years.
Let's do that.
It started out as what I would call an IPA and a half. It was fuller. It was more. It was hoppier. I think it was almost at 90 IBUs. It had more crystal malt. It had Cara 15 and Cara malt and Cara Hell, and it had wheat and it had dextrin, and it had all these components. We were even at some point using Maris Otter. So, it had a higher terminal gravity, but it needed a little bit higher terminal gravity to support these 90 IBUs.
And when was this?
Crushing the kettle.
Yeah. What year was this that you're talking
about? This is probably when we first started to produce our beer in bottles back in 2012.
Okay.
I would say.
Got it.
12 to 14, when it was really super aggressive, and we really had to put more malt to combat this extreme bitterness that we were throwing at it. But it was enough to create an impact, I guess. But over time, I think consumers' palates have changed, and we found that, we liked it a little drier. We liked it with a little less color. We liked it with a little less body and mouthfeel, and almost as the consumers' palates changed, so did our palates changed with it. So we started to drop the terminal gravities and take more crystal malt out and not use Maris Otter and go to 2 row and lean it up a little bit but really focus on, okay, what malt can give us just this little bit of backbone that can support all these additions of hops that we're about to throw at it. And that's really what we did, is just found this platform that can hold up to all these layers of hops. Because we put hops in at extracts at the beginning, we put them in the middle, we put them in 2/3 to the end, we put them at the end, we cool wort from the kettle to the whirlpool, we put more hops in the kettle. We're using multiple products. We use a hop back, we're flushing all the wort through a hop back, and then we're cooling it. So we're driving all these hop oils in there, and really it's not about malt. It's really about hops.
But you make a good point, because I think when Mike and I and Eric, other friend of the show, we sit and we have conversations about this beer, and I think it is that just slight malt backbone that kind of sets it apart from a lot of the other IPAs of the style that I have the most preference for, which is what I would say was like a West Coast or even like a San Diego style, SoCal style. But Headhunters has a little bit more malt or sweetness to it, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, is it the malt, or is it some of the higher terminal gravity?
Right. Right. It could be that.
Really, I think that Midwest or classic American style IPA to me should have some body.
Yes.
Two Hearted has body. That's one beer that's probably never changed.
Right.
It's got some crystal malt in it.
Yep.
And that's what people come to love. So I really think it does become where you really need body if you're going to go down American IPA or West Coast is a little bit lean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where would a beer like Headhunter finish at?
I usually right now we're at about 3 Plato, so 10, 12.
Right on.
And it will creep then down to about 2.8.
Cool. And like modern now these like modern West Coast IPAs, which are like incredibly pale, all Pilsner malt.
It could go to 1.8.
They're like one,
exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like it's just, and I don't know. I'm not looking for, like I say, malt sweetness or toasty or the malt to really contribute much, and that's why we just use a commodity 2-row barley that really holds up. But it really is about about the drinkability.
Yeah.
And finding that balance of what I consider to be slightly crisp and just dry enough that leaves your tongue kind of clipped, and it kind of cleans off the back of the tongue. That's what I'm going for.
Yeah. And the sweetness or the gravity is what differentiates it from some of those, to me, San Diego West Coast IPAs, and I describe it around here as a Midwest West Coast IPA, because it does have a little bit of that. Two Hearted is a beer that we kind of reference when talking about Headhunter as well. And it's,
it has that, but it also still has that lean, structured body to it, where it's not like some beers that finish at 3 can be a little, not quite as crisp and structured and lean as this one drinks. But
right. I guess it's all about the balance. Yeah.
It's perfect. It's a perfect beer.
Yeah. So then it's interesting. So then you're saying, Matt, that the beer has changed over time, and it sounds like a lot of the great beers have, because Vinny has said that Pliny is kind of always doing the same, and it's trying to hold the same place in the world of IPA that it always has, and in order to do that, it needs to change, and that's kind of what you're saying is going on with Headhunter as well.
Here's a classic example. So Headhunter had a lot of strength early on, and it was pretty much brewed with kettle additions, and that was dry hopped. It never saw any kind of hop back additions. And when we bought the brewery from Trogs, they had an old hop back. So back in 2012, when we first started brewing on this new system from Trogs, which is we started to incorporate some flower hops into the like a fresh hop version of Headhunter, and we were blown away by how that fresh hop or not fresh hop, but yeah, the fresh hop contributed. And then we started to like, okay, so how can we try this again with another headhunter with flower after the whirlpool? And so after a few years of maybe securing some contracts or something like that, it then shifted to include whole flower. So, I mean, there's a prime example where at one point it didn't have any hopback additions. And then when we started adding them in 12, I think it took our World Beer Cup stuff, and I think we won some medals because we had that extra like oomph of late additions of oils that boosted beer. So it changed again.
That's awesome.
Is that just another layer of where you can add more hop oil, or is there something about the unpelletized flour that is essential to the flavor profile, or are those inextricably linked?
I think I understand your question, but you know, when you pelletize a hop, you pound it through a hammer mill. It's a violent process, right? So this is really, just in my opinion, it really allows you to kind of get this really unadulterated hop flavor and oil extracted very late in the process. You know, and it adds another element. It adds another cost too. You know, so there's that as well. So it's not really an element of what I consider to be aroma. I think you could notice aroma, not a good bang for your buck. It's really about late oils. It's about really getting those late essential oils and some of that natural hop character late in the process.
And does that come down to, like, in your mind, is that like a type of like a grip or a resin that presents itself like in terms of flavor, or are you looking like let's pack as much oil as we can into the wort before the yeast starts doing things?
I would say that is less resin driven and more oil driven.
Okay.
Meaning like I wouldn't want hops in the hop back that would be like catty or garlicky or oniony. I want them fruity, tropical, citrusy, bright, and really, but sticky too. I want them sticky. You know, I want them sticky.
And
so
that's as you're cooling in, you're
so
dropping
high oil is not a problem. And at that point, we've cooled the temperature too. So we've taken the temperature down, you know, down in the 185s. So we're extracting at a much lower temperature than what we are, you know, than a lot of people.
Now, there is some resinous character to that beer. Is that more the kettle additions then, if it's not coming from that hopback addition? It's not like super high in resinous character, but there's certainly something there that's, you know, it's not like a straight up hazy juice bomb. There's some grippiness there. Where do you think that, where is your brain where you're getting that character? Where do you think that's coming from?
The resin?
Yeah.
Yeah, gosh, I'm not 100% sure exactly.
Okay, sure.
Get pinpoint where that's coming from. I would say more than anything, it's probably dry hopping. Mm-hmm. You know, we were really aggressive with dry hopping. Yeah. You know, and we dry hop, you know, a couple pounds per barrel. You know, it's an expensive beer to make.
I'm sure.
And we make a lot of it.
Percentage-wise, you don't have to give us actual numbers to give the recipe away. Kettle versus whirlpool versus dry hopping. Is that even, or are you way heavier on dry hopping, or how are you deploying?
You mean what three areas of the kettle are the heaviest?
Yeah.
Well, we're more oils to the first, you know, mostly to the first 20 minutes. So, and then at the end of the boil, we're whirlpool heavy.
Yeah. We're
whirlpool heavy with cooling. We have a tube and shell heat exchanger. We cool from the kettle to the whirlpool, and we lose. We definitely, a goal is reduction of iso alpha and increase of essential oils.
Right on. So very modern approach, like you said, applied, like how you adjusted. That's very modern within the last, that was very popular within the last 5 to 7 years, right?
We did it in 2018. I don't think we were the first to do it, but I think we were one of the ones that I think we understood that maybe there is this association with raw bitterness that carries over to heat and time. We need enough time to let the suspended solids rest, but at the same time, we don't want to pick up a bunch of bitterness. So we do things like, you know, reduce some of the plant matter and do some more pourable products and do a few things to get the true pile smaller, but also reduce vegetation and ultimately make brighter flavors.
So in addition to a headhunter, it seems that you have an affinity for German wheat ales. Is that fair to say, or do you just happen to be exceptionally good at brewing them, but you don't really feel one way or another? You've got to love them.
I don't drink a ton of wheat beer, to be honest
Really?
with you, like, compared to what I would like lager or IPA. That's for sure. I have a huge appreciation for them. I like to travel through Bavaria in particular, so and I've been doing it for quite a while. So I've become friends with a lot of guys, and I've been inspired by some of their processes, and I guess I've just kind of tried to mentor them to the point where I can try to do stuff that is as good as they are. And it's been actually is things like, I've actually brought yeast back and banked them here in the United States and done some things where, I bootleg some products so that we can have, unique products here. So those are the kind of things that maybe take us a little bit over the top. And we do have open fermentation and,
Yeah.
so I don't mean to get ahead of your subject, but
No,
yeah,
please.
I do love wheat beer, and we've been on a mission from, when we built a new brewery, we decided to commit a lot of time and resources and energy into trying to produce the best ones that we can, and that's kind of what we've done.
Yeah, I'd say so. Do you happen to know what the longest dry spell has been for you guys without winning a GABF or a World Beer Cup award? I don't, but I'm just curious. I mean, it has to be like, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years. I mean, it should be. It's
So,
crazy.
I think I know the answer to this, but
Come on. What do you think it is?
We've never actually won. We've never lost back to back.
Got it.
We've never lost at a World Beer Cup and a GABF.
Sorry.
But I do think over the lifespan of all of the events that we've done since 2009, to the best of my knowledge, there's been 3 where we came back empty-handed.
Okay. Got it.
3. I think 3. And then
You ask who the judges are, and you have them
last
banned.
couple that,
Yeah.
GABF twice at least.
May I ask some more
And
questions
I think
about wheat beer?
2010 World
Yeah.
Beer Cup, I think. So anyway,
We'll get back to that. You had a question,
Yeah,
Mike,
I just
about
have a few
wheat?
questions about what are the main differences when you're brewing the wheat beers, the way you're brewing them from the rest of your production? Are there differences in mashing? Is it obviously the open fermentation is different, but what do you see when you're looking at those beers and how they differ from your other beers? What are the biggest things you're doing process-wise that impact the flavor the most? That makes sense?
yeah, I think so. You start obviously with, we use German wheat. We don't really focus on using German Pilsner malt, but so the wheat portion of it is definitely from Germany. We mash them very lengthy. We go into these Fröhlich rests that are lower temperatures and protein rests and beta rests and alpha rests, and we go through all those processes. We've done another step farther than that, where we actually have used flotation. We grow our own yeast up in our own propagators. We only use one generation, so it only gets used once.
Wow.
It goes into a flotation tank, which is a little different. So it gets an aeration process of protein separation that gets mixed with yeast, and then it goes back into the open fermenter. The first one gets oxygen, the second one doesn't. There's a whole process of how we go about doing them, and we bring them in at a certain temperature, in the low 60s. They combine to be 64. Then we let it free rise from 64 to 68. There's a whole little formula of what I would call, setting the stage for these phenolics to excrete the desirable compounds that we're looking for in the ferment. And we've had a lot of challenges with it lately. We actually added a couple horizontal tanks into that room, and it disrupted the airflow a little bit. So, we've had a little bit of a challenge with, getting the same degree of attenuation. Those are problems we deal with, working a brewery every day. So, we're figuring it out, but, it goes to show you that it's a living organism, and, it needs, a certain state to to do its job in a clean environment. That's the one thing you have to worry about with open fermentation is, sanitation.
Yeah. And so you're saying you added horizontal tanks that affected the airflow, and that affected the fermentation. Like, did that affect the temperature that was coming off of it, or like the
Not
more
the temperature
pressure because it wasn't
necessarily.
evacuating?
It affected its ability to respire.
Crazy.
So,
So there's more pressure on it.
Absolutely.
Man,
That is it. And I reached out to some
bonkers.
friends in Germany, and we questioned this, and then, we've resolved the issue for the most part, but, I reached out to some friends in Germany, and Michael Plank, he's a vice beer brewer for the most part. And he's won a lot of World Beer Cup,
he's won a
brewery of
ton.
the years and
Yeah.
stuff. Michael Plank. So,
Yeah.
I asked Michael, I said, like, what could be happening here? And the first thing he emailed me back is like, did the pressure did the air pressure in the room change? And I'm like, well, that's your first question. Like, and so there you go. So
Crazy.
it's brewing beer, that's what keeps us on our toes, right?
Totally. I mean, it's one of those things, like, yeast is a thing that you get really in love with, but a lot of the times you're like, well, it's just, it does its thing. It does what we ask it to do. And then some
Yeah.
yeasts, they don't. Some yeasts like,
Sure.
I'm doing what I want. I'm doing this thing right now. And then, it's crazy
Pretty
to think
strong.
about a couple of more tanks can affect the pressure in the room. Yeah.
Was there ever
very cool.
a time where you didn't know whether you wanted to brew that for phenolics or fruit, or a combination of landing on a combination of both? In terms of like its fermentation profile from a wheat beer?
Like
So
esters
that
versus
yeast,
phenols.
that's actually a blend of two yeasts. And so, I think one kind of does one thing and the other does, another thing. And so that's really been the major, I think, that adds complexity to the beer. One is pretty front to back, clove, banana. And then the other one has all these mid-level characteristics of what I would call white pepper and bubblegum in depth.
Is that kind of why you can't go past one generation? Do they fall out of balance after a generation?
We don't sell enough of it, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah. That's a very honest, very fair answer.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. I would be like, yeah, that's it. The quality, the yeast magic.
No.
Well, hopefully these people will see all the awards and they'll start buying more goggle
I mean, we
fogger.
had some really nice.
Alpenglow.
We won a few medals. We won at the World Beer Cup this year for our Weizenbock, and then our the Bernstein Farb, which is basically more of an amber Weiss beer.
Are those open tanks exclusively for making wheat beer in, or do you mess around with anything else in there?
I think anything top fermented can go in there. There's been Kolsch, and there's been Belgian Strongs, and there's no rhyme or reason. And I don't think we really worry about cross contamination. And I mean, our whole prop room is in there, but it's a pretty limited access room, and it's a very sterile environment. And it's
Cool.
and it's where our wortway goes through.
Sweet.
Is there a medal that you're most proud of that you can think of, or one that kind of stands out for, I don't know, that you kind of maybe smart a little bit
I
more
don't know.
broadly?
I guess our first medal in 2009, it was for a smoked porter, and I was on the back of the
Very
loading dock,
2009.
actually smoking some of the malt, with one of my former brewer guys, and so we actually we smoked the fucking malt, we wet it, we put it in the convection oven, and we made this thing, and it won a silver medal. And we just, so that was probably more kind of a grassroots thing.
Right.
And other than that, I it's a team effort. There's so much that goes into making the beer that we do, and I can't take any credit for anything more than just, doing the same job that everybody else does to make great beer. So, I mean, I do think that the two medals that we won, golds in 2013, World Beer Cup, GABF, back-to-back, pretty good accomplishment, man. There was 700 beers that we had to best to do that.
You mean
So, I don't know if
2023?
that'll ever be done again, because I don't think the categories will ever be that big. But it was mind-boggling. in a lot of ways.
Were some of those early ones like really like life and business changing? Was like, did you see like you're like, oh, we can do these
Yeah,
other?
I think it was probably maybe the 2011 GABF where we won silver, I think, or something. And that's when I think I looked at my partner and I said, we got to get a beer to more people. That's exactly what I said
Yeah.
at that point. And that's when it all worked, where I was actually sitting with Chris Trogner at our bar, and Chris was telling me what he was doing with his future plans to, build a bigger brewery and from Harrisburg to Hershey. And I said, what are you doing with your brewery? And he said, well, I'm going to sell it. And I said, well, you sell it to me. And so, there's these moments where it's like, that was a pretty cool piece of equipment. It was at 5-vessel brew house. It had some new Bracon technology. It had some computerization. It had some ability to like actually do some throughput. The price was right, and so, we hit the ground running, man, where, we did 7,000 barrels our first year, did 9 our second, 13, 16, 18, 20. Like we just were, we things fell into place.
That's great.
And also was, one of my working partners now, who's my director of operations, Chris Altmont, was, part of this whole growth thing of just, let's get better, let's get a little bigger. And that's what we've done.
Very cool.
What do you think, being in the Midwest, being in Ohio, and away from kind of the West Coast or Colorado or the huge craft beer markets, how do you think that's affected your brewery, both from a kind of growth and an offerings standpoint, if you think it's affected you guys at all?
I don't really think it has. I mean,
Okay.
I don't really worry about anybody's doing on the West Coast. We're more of that Mid-Atlantic, Midwest kind of company. So for us, we're definitely continually focused on local, and we do actually have 2 local markets because of the Pittsburgh, / Cleveland market. So I don't know. For me, I try not to get worked up with everybody else is doing. We have our own style of making beer. We're enjoying doing what we're doing. We're not lighting the world on fire, but we're paying our bills, and that's all we set out to do, was make great beer, and try to have some fun doing it. And maybe there's some chips at the end of the table after the ride's over.
Doug Valicki, the beer aficionado and a huge fan and proponent of your brewery, but Headhunter specifically, was curious about your recent use of natural flavors in Headhunter, but also just the trend more broadly. And so I promised him I would ask you about it. Did you have any, thoughts about kind of taking these some of these flavors and kind of combining them with your IPA or with any of your beers? I guess you've been doing it for a while.
Yeah, boy. I mean, I think in the last year or so, our product development team has probably gone through hundreds of different samples of stuff. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, We're constantly evaluating products and looking at different things, whether it's, terpenes or any kind of essential oils and things to drive flavors into our beer, or try to float with some of what's happening in the industry. You can't turn a blind eye. What's happening? Consumer trends are definitely, they're in the flux right now. So, to stay viable, we all have to kind of diversify and find other ways to create, a broader flavor profile. So, we're doing a lot of stuff, and the experimentation we did with our Jungle Juice Headhunter is, it's a brand that I started doing back in 2011 or 12 by adding basically cases and cases of citrus fruit and putting it through a grinding machine and squeezing it through by hand. and that's led up to us about almost recently where we have commercial juicers. And so I go to Restaurant Depot and I get all this juice, and we get cases of it and we run it through and we put it in kegs and we put it in and we juice beer, and that's how Jungle Juice started. And it's been a really unique process. So we had to try to find a way to, we can't do that. We don't have a pasteurizer. We're in the process of adding a pasteurizer, but so there's things right now where it was like, okay, so we have to find a stable product. And so we found something that, what we thought was pretty unique and added a really good flavor characteristic. And it took a lot of trial and error, and we landed on like what's called like an orange blossom kind of fruitiness. Mm-hmm. And so I think it adds a nice little terpene, like oil brightness to the product, So, we're just trying to, stay relevant with, expanding the dynamics of an existing beer.
Interesting. Is there anything, well, I don't know if there's any other questions that you guys had in particular. I was going to start going.
Not off of that.
Slightly off the rails a little bit and asking about other stuff. I was just doing some reading on past interviews you've done, and I saw one from, I think it was like 12 years ago or something like that said you did this is me just being a fanboy geek, that you guys did a collab with Alpine. So Fatheads and Alpine did a collab. Do you even remember this at this point? Because you remembered it 12 years ago, but I'm not going to hold you to that. Yeah.
Oh, no. I'm a recovering duet lover.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I am. That beer was absolutely just.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we made some beer with some experimental hop or something. It was all watermelon-y years and years ago.
Okay.
I was blown away by the experience and had a great time with those guys. And but I've always been a big fan of the Alpine stuff. Was early on, to me, that was kind of on a different level.
You're not going to find anyone here arguing with that. I think you have to get the Mikkel-Henny collab going. I'll just officially say.
You should connect them.
Yeah, I'm going out there next week. I'll just tell them that you're down for it and that you'll be out soon. So I'll just, I'll take care of it.
Was Duet a Citra Simcoe beer?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was heavy Simcoe. I think so, yeah. Yeah. And ironically, I think the Nelson was the one that really grabbed a lot of attention. Because I think they're one of the first breweries that really showcased Nelson early on, I think. I was never a big fan. I don't know, for some reason.
I love it. I love both of them.
My palate doesn't work as well with those New Zealand stuff. I'm trying to get better.
I guess on the flip side of that, you talked earlier about that first good batch of Simcoe you guys were able to get. What was that like? That's a little bit before my brewing career started in 2009, 10 when you were talking about. What was that like compared to the things you were getting before? Do you remember being like, holy, this is a new thing?
Right.
Especially now, because I think that Simcoe gets some shade. And it was to me, it was just, when it first came out, it could have been just as good as Citra for its time, something like that. I feel now a lot of people get a little weary of Simcoe, but we're talking about a bomb-ass hop.
Yeah, and it started all this stuff.
Yeah.
Right? It's the thing that Vinny was using where people started being like, wait, what is going on here? This is to me, that seems like a real turning point for American hoppy beer. Now, I could just be a little bit too young or a little bit too, lacking in knowledge, but does that track for you, the way that you've experienced hoppy beers? Because you're right at the center of the hurricane.
When I worked at Great Lakes, we were big into Cascade Centennial. Yeah. And so that combination to me was like the peanut butter and butter, the peanut butter and jelly kind of combo, right?
Peanut butter and butter is pretty good too.
Yeah, for sure. So, but I think, over time, when I got exposed to Simcoe, that was obviously such a unique hop at that time. Nothing had that level of pininess and bright tropical character. I really don't think there was more fruitiness, but these were brighter characteristics, I think. And then when Citra came along, and then when those two came together, I felt those two were like, they were the ultimate peanut butter and jelly. And so we had contracted for Centennial for quite a ways out. And I was starting to realize that Centennial to me, like, it has a very poor hop storage index. So it's the first to get harvest. It's usually the first one to just fall off the cliff. And I was noticing, like, our Centennial, the contribution of, like, our beer was getting like this weird mid-level palette of, it was falling after, three quarters of the year through the harvest, it was starting to fade, and so there became a point where we just took all of our Centennial, we took it out, replaced it with Citra, and again, Headhunter went, whoa, holy fuck, that got fucking really bright again,
Yeah.
So, and then we took all of our Centennial and we put it into hop extract, and to this day, Centennial hop extract still lives in our beer. It just doesn't live in the T90 form.
Gotcha. Do you have a personal favorite hop?
It's Simcoe.
Yeah.
So cool.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
It's
I named my dog after it.
You should. Yeah.
you should. Yeah. Rock.
So back in the day, then it was a lot of the flavor aroma was derived from Centennial in Headhunter then, which to me is
I don't know. I wouldn't call it
No?
flavor and aroma. I mean, I think a lot of it was more mid palate kind of stuff,
Okay.
where it was in towards the tail end of the boil, but it was really more in the 45 to 20 minute range. We definitely, once we started getting access to Citra, we bought all of it that we could. And,
Got it. Okay, so Headhunter's always been a Simcoe beer. Then there wasn't like a pre-Simcoe
beer.
version.
And to
Okay,
this
got it.
day, I mean, we buy half of what we buy is Simcoe.
Yeah.
When we
Yeah.
brew Headhunter, we're on a pace to probably brew it 375 times.
Okay.
Something like that.
That's awesome. I'd brew it more than once a day. Or you're saying in a year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that rocks.
Yeah, it's cooking,
Yeah.
man. It's cooking.
That's why when you go to Middleburg Heights, it's always like a couple days old.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's great. Yeah, even Mike. I got Mike to stop by Middleburg Heights.
I've been twice.
one
What are you
time.
talking
Oh,
about?
you've been twice?
I went on the way out and on the way back.
Yeah, and he brought me back
A sign.
a
A standee.
sign.
The fathead guy
the
wearing a
fathead
Hawaiian
guy,
shirt.
which now he sits in our vestibule, and people ask who he is, and I say it's from Fatheads, and they say, "Can I get some?" I said, "Drive to Ohio. 'Cause why do you have it here?" And I was like, "Stop asking stupid questions."
Would you say he looks like a Grabowski?
What's
You know what I'm talking about?
No.
Classic, like, Chicago Bears fan. A
Oh,
Grabowski, right?
yeah,
Oh, sure.
yeah. Like a super fan.
Do you think that's why there's an infinity as well? Or an infinity between
Affinity?
Chicago and Pittsburgh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's also we also both say Jagoff. Like that's a specifically Chicago and Pittsburgh thing.
Jagoff is for sure, for real. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't say Yinzer here though, or Yins.
Well,
No. I've tried to bring it back, but I don't have the juice to
I
get.
don't think there's any
Yins.
shortage of it being
I
said
don't-
out there.
I don't have the Riz to start Yins here, you know.
I'm more of a John guy.
Yeah, well,
You know,
you're a
that's
Philly.
a Philly
You're a
thing.
Philly.
Yeah.
I don't know if we told you Chris is from Philly, so I don't know if that's a rivalry for you guys.
Not really. I don't
All right.
think. Not for me anyway. There's really no rivalry.
I took the poop.
So a question I wanted to ask is, does the fathead guy have it? Does he have a name, even internally or unofficially? Does he have a name, or is he just like Mr.
no,
Fathead?
I don't really
or
think he
the
does.
guy?
No.
Okay.
No. Every now and then we find at some festivals and stuff that people that pretty damn close to what he looks like, but I don't.
Okay, but he doesn't have like there's no name.
No, he's not like fatty or anything like
He could
that.
be a
Right,
Frank.
right.
I think he's a Frank.
No.
You
Looks
know,
like a Frank.
I'm not gonna lie. I didn't know what you looked like before this,
We were,
and I'm a
yeah.
little disappointed you're not actually that guy.
We wanted it to be, yeah.
No, I'm joking. I'm
Well, if I
joking.
keep drinking Headhunter like I am, don't worry, I'll
Grow-
be funny chunky.
We wanted you to
Grow
have like a
mustache.
Bermuda shirt on.
You ever dressed up for Halloween as him?
So we heard a while back that you guys were doing a full rebrand, and I don't know if that happened or not. But we on the show we're talking a lot about what it could potentially be, Whether it's happened or not, I was thinking, Mike, maybe you and I could pitch some of the ideas, and that way we could take some credit for a future rebrand.
Sure.
Okay. So,
I can't wait for this.
yeah. So first of all, I'm thinking. Notice I didn't wait for Matt to say, "Yeah, that's okay." I just kept going. So, I think, all right. It's all about people being health conscious these days. Slim cans, very in.
Yep.
Mick Ultra, High Noon, all that stuff. Everyone is on, Ozempic, stuff like that. I say he goes on a diet, and the new rebrand is he's extremely thin, still a giant head. The head stays fat, but he is rail thin. Just putting it out there. I think it would play really well with Gen Alpha. They're going to be a drinking age and coming up, and I think it would resonate a lot personally. And what were you thinking, Mike?
Well, I was thinking the same thing, but that could we have a couple of these ideas, but it could be tied into if you do a collaboration with Revolution, they have an anti-hero series. You've got anti-fat, and it would come with an Ozempic pen.
Okay.
This is like the equivalent of Brian Urlacher getting hair.
Right. Yeah. And then you had an idea about him maybe hitting the gym.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So you just get yoked instead of...
Right.
Yeah.
Just shredded.
After he loses the weight, he gets shredded and yoked, and that's like a more of a steroided out kind of...
Natural.
His
No,
head
he'd
gets
be natty.
yes.
No, his head would get even bigger.
Oh, his neck would get bigger.
Yeah.
Like a Barry Bonds neck.
Yeah, right.
Got it. And
Yeah.
yoked out.
The only way your head can get bigger is if you do steroids.
Performance enhancing
Right.
hunter.
Right. Exactly. Nah, see, that's I just want him to be absolutely shredded, so when he flexes, the Bermuda shirt just like
Rips off of him.
It's almost like explodes off of him.
Yeah.
Because he's just so yoked.
Is that my idea?
I think they were our ideas.
Yeah, okay.
It's okay. So no response needed. You're welcome to say great idea, but just a couple ideas we had for the fathead to bring him into the next generation of drinkers so they can enjoy it and identify. I guess.
Yeah.
With him.
Can all the brand directors be bribed, basically, for a small batch of one of these names? No, I'm joking.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. So
That went well.
I think he's dropped off. Matt's dropped off. Okay.
No.
I'm
Honestly,
joking.
you really don't see anything. You never see his hands. Like there's no hands, so it's all facial features. So that becomes somewhat of a problem.
Right.
And yeah, we're trying to. I would say we are actually undergoing like a rebrand. So we have some new products that are coming out, and we're trying to like tighten things up and freshen things up, and it's kind of an important thing for us.
Are you going to show his
absolutely.
hands?
Nothing to joke around with.
Okay. No.
When it comes to branding, marketing, and those kind of things.
One of the greatest things you guys have done. You guys do a great job from a branding standpoint, and you have incredible names. And it definitely harkens back to like a very specific time where like no one has that type of like that's the perfect time of craft beer when just like the names have all these like just really good puns that support the beer.
Benjamin Danklin.
You took them all too.
Yeah. Is there any any idea, like what direction, or can you give us any info about what direction you're going in with the rebrand when you're doing it? I mean, obviously it's everyone's in the beer selling game. That's what it's about.
Well, it's pretty dynamic in a lot of ways because it's not just beer. It's non-alcoholic beer or low-alc beer. It's THC. It's potentially canned cocktails. So there's a whole gamut of things that are happening, and then, then we're looking to maybe, brighten up some of our graphics to make them cleaner, where there's not like 4 heads on a package and maybe there's 2. Just to try to, keep it a little brighter. Yeah. So anyway, it's an evolution.
2 heads are better than 4. They always say
it's happening every day, and it's challenging, but it's fun. It's exciting, and that's what keeps brewing interesting, I think.
Are you going to try to show his hands, or is that
Like,
that
is
off,
that
is
for
that
real?
off the table?
Is
Like
that-
this is
No,
this is a
we're
serious
actually
question.
just- No, you honestly like the head is becoming less and less of a thing. Meaning there's the branding element of the actual brewery. There's some elements that happen between particular families of beer or a brand like Headhunter, But there's a lot of it that we're just focused on core, and the other stuff is just a little cleaner look.
Cool.
Do you think that he would drop off some labels, or is he already not on some labels? Is the mascot?
Well, he's on all of them.
Yeah.
It's not like 3 and 4 times.
Got it.
We're really just trying to make it. We want to get the message across, and then we want it to be a tell what we're trying to sell you, and make it kind of cool, purchase.
Cool.
Are we ready for some letters? Is that okay?
Sure.
Can we move on to that? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I have a couple letters for no handwritten letters this time. I think our listeners need to get with it and
together.
Yeah, get out their pens and pencils and.
I feel like everyone's intimidated after the message in a bottle.
It's true. Yeah, after we got a message in a bottle, that was they kind of slowed down after that, but it's okay. So we have only electronic letters at this point, but this was a good one, I think, considering our two guests here. So this comes from Alex from Ohio. He says, "Hello, insiders. And in a few episodes, you have mentioned that you feel the sweet spot for an IPA is around 7 ABV. This got me thinking about the sweet spots for other styles. If you had to choose a specific ABV, to maybe a decimal place or two, he's saying, for each for any specific style, what would they be? No need to cover them all, but I'd be interested to hear your takes on some of the bigger ones. Thanks, Alex from Ohio." So I want to riff on this one a little bit and see, Matt, if you agree, is like the sweet spot for IPA. I think we've said like 7 to 7.5 is really kind of like our
7.1 to 7.3 for me is the real.
7.5. I think is.
I've heard 7.3 on this podcast.
Yeah,
Okay.
7.3 is perfect.
For you. Okay.
For me, yeah. 7.1 to 7.3. That's where it's like this is gonna be balanced. This is gonna be nice. This is gonna
I'm
be
7
great.
to 7.5. For sure.
You're a little
Yeah.
looser than I am.
Yeah, I think so. There you go. But what do you think it is about that ABV, or do you agree at all, Matt, that there's like a sweet spot from an alcohol standpoint for certain styles, and we can start with IPA. You're shaking your head no.
No, I don't really think there is a correlation between the amount of alcohol and balance of hop flavors and oils and aromas and all those things. I think it really has to do with when the hops are added, what the terminal gravity of the beer is, ultimately what malts went into it. There's a lot of things that can kind of contribute to these, to finding that right balance. So it's hard to say just this alcohol, this terminal gravity gives you this body. It all depends on, what was put in between to make that happen, in my opinion.
Sure.
So, but I don't think that for the kind of beers that we make, which I consider to be full-bodied, aggressive, West Coast style, American style IPAs, they need fullness from alcohol, and they need a level of dryness for drinkability. So there becomes a sweet spot. And for us, it becomes, 7 to 7.5% alcohol, 3.5 to, 2.8 to 3.4 Plato terminal gravity. There's we need body, we need fullness, and so that's for the bulk of our beers.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about it, Jude? Do you think that there's a sweet spot for certain styles, or that they just kind of sing kind of true at a certain ABV, or?
I thought if you would ask me about like lager beer.
Yeah, go for it.
or like let's say like hoppy lager beer, in my mind like that would reside somewhere for me between like 5.25 and 5%, but that might be because there's more body than it would be in a 5% beer. I don't know. In my mind too, and Matt, I don't know if like you feel that like there needs to be a certain percentage, like a certain percentage of alcohol in a beer that extracts hop flavor, or it extracts like all like the positive aspects of the hop you want, in higher gravity beers than lower gravity beers. When it comes to IPA, I'd like to be somewhere between like 7 and 7.25%, because but to Matt's point, there's so many other variables that go into how you get there.
Sure, but I mean, there's a reason why session IPAs, when they were a thing, and weren't as good. Now, I'm not a brewer. I wouldn't know why that is, but I think something about the alcohol and the things that kind of come with that. So not just
like,
literally that you could put, vodka into it and proof it up.
I think it also is like expectation
Honestly,
too.
I think like the session IPA we make, I really do enjoy our session IPA, but it is one of the more challenging beers we make because it does have such a low starting gravity, and it does have a pretty low terminal gravity, and it does have a pretty high hopping rate. So, you end up with something that if you go too extreme, it becomes a little vegetative and a little stewed like. So we found that there's certain things that we've done where we dry hop it, which the way we dry hop that particular beer and the way we dry hop Headhunter are two different things. Like, it only spends about 48 hours on hops. It spends a very short window on hop, so that we don't want to capture all of these massive like plant characteristics of the dry hop. We're just looking to kind of like give it a quick little blast and then get it off. Otherwise, it becomes really, really weird. It reduces its drinkability, is what I should say. So those are really delicate beers to make. I would rather make something that has a bigger body and more alcohol and a little bit more higher terminal gravity, because I can balance those a lot easier than I can some of these things that are lower gravity and heavily hopped. So they're really challenging.
Yeah, and maybe they're just harder to make, and that's
Yeah, especially those styles where you don't get a bunch of yeast character, or like the fermentation itself isn't supposed to be a huge part of the flavor profile.
Yeah.
I feel like when we make Saison, we can shoot for a lower ABV because we have the ester or the phenolic thing that's going to, balance it out in a different way or add body, when you have these yeast that make more glycerin than traditional like American ale yeast. So, like, I don't know. I think part of that is like how much hop load can something take before it just totally throws it out of whack. I think something with the ABV or the amount of malt in that beer has to do with why we like them at like 7 to 7.5.
Yeah, I mean
It goes deeper than that. I mean, it's not just the amount. It's time, it's temperature, it's contact, it's rousing. There's a lot of other things that can go into that can actually take that whole equation and just stir it upside down. Totally. So it's not just there's other ways to take to get to an end result with the same amount of hops. Meaning 50 degrees and 65 degrees are going to give you two different results, and whether one gets resuspended and one doesn't, or so there's a lot of different ways to get there, and it's hard to say like, okay, like this works for us, but it might not work for you, so
for sure. It's also funny when like you think about going back to the beginning of this conversation about how like everyone starts as a home brewer, right? And then sometimes home brewers ask you questions about how to do something, and you're just like, you can't do what we do. Like, you can't resuspend your hops in a way. Like, it depends on your setup, I guess, but like maybe there's some crazy setups now. But there's a lot of times where it's like the things that happen that kind of seem on the margins that make a beer as great as Headhunter is, like, they're almost impossible to recreate in a homebrew setting, or even in like a different brewery sometimes. Like if it's a different setup and we don't have the hop back, or it's like
Yeah, I mean, a lot of brewers don't have a hop back.
We've shared our recipes with Headhunter for a couple different publications, and we're not holding back. Like
Right.
that's the way we do it. We just our water's different. Our malt might be different than yours. Our tank dynamics as far as height to diameter ratio on lautering, to the velocity of the boil, to what salts we add into every process of it, to what hop products we use and what temperature we use them, and it's really hard to it's
Right.
not like you can recreate that.
Right. I mean, it's
It's unique to us. It really is.
for sure. And like those things are like if you tell someone like how to play golf and like you're like hit it as far as you can, and then you're like, well, how do I actually get it in the hole? It's like, well, you got to get the right water chemistry. You've got to like get like the right time, like all these other metrics that like you really can't know or think about when you're brewing 5 gallons at a time, or even smaller breweries or all these things where we can't measure some of this stuff. It's like the way you putt is that you have all these things in the margins that you tweak and you touch and like you push one way or another, and they make huge changes. But also like brewing a 50 barrel batch versus brewing 5 gallons, if you miss on your salts by like a little bit in a 5 gallon batch, you're making a completely different beer. Whereas like you can add a couple extra grams here or there in a larger batch.
A big difference too, I think, is we all have personal relationships with our beers, and the difference between all of our breweries is that only us live with our beers all year, and only us can share the perspective we have with our beers. Because it's a very unique thing to us. And how we arrive there is because we're thinking about them all the time, and we live with them all the time, and we're arriving at decisions based on our everyday experience with them, and we're ultimately the only ones that know what to do with them, or what we want to do with them.
I mean, they're yours.
Yeah.
The way you're talking about it is, they're your beers, and kind of you understand them on a,
And except for maybe Headhunter, which we love so much, no one's going to love your beer as much as you love your beer, right? At least as like far as like trying to get it to the place where you want it to be. Like we'll drink Headhunter, was like, great batch, this is perfect. I don't know, no notes. And I'm sure you drink it and you're just like, we could push it a little bit this way or that way. Or maybe at this point you don't think that much, but it got to the place it does because I think a lot of brewers, or like the best brewers, thinking like, how can I make this the best thing it can possibly be and the best version of itself all the time?
right, and the best version of itself all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
that's difficult because there's a lot of beers that are among my favorites in the world, and you try them, from time to time, and they do kind of vary. They always stay true to what they are.
Right.
There's kind of like an allowable variance, but there are preferences. You're like, oh, this is a good batch, or
Yeah.
and I don't know. Brewers may hate to hear that, but
They're
it
living
also is
things.
enjoyable.
We think a lot of people think of them as like static products, but like when you're actually making artisanal or craft beer, these are living ideas, and it's not just this is how we brew it. We get these ingredients and we go through the process, and at the end, it's the thing. It's like no, like we're tasting it. These things are dynamic. They're agricultural products we're dealing with, and trying to make the thing taste at the end the way that we think it should, or the way that it tastes in our brain, or the way that we
And
think we
taste
want
in
it
the
to taste.
brain is an important part of it, because honestly, like there's one thing that we do is we do a lot of blind evaluation of everything from our hop products to our sensory evaluation, and we just let sensory pretty much like drive how we perceive our beers or our hops, and I think that's a huge part of it, is just that sensory element of it to get better and challenge ourselves. And I've said it before, it's good product in, good product out. And if your hops are going to shine, then your beer is going to shine. So that's our job, to kind of sift through all the stuff, and we have buying power, which helps. And so I have a pretty good indication when I leave hop selection, what we've accomplished. But then until we brew with it, it's really hard to say, And then we always have what I would call a backup plan. So we always have enough dry hop to from another supplier, that if we don't like our primary supplier, then we can shift a hop from a Simcoe from this supplier to this supplier. So we have enough to cover us a whole calendar year. So we have all these, what I would call levers that we're pulling constantly to try to basically say, okay, well, I thought the Simcoe was going to be the deal of the show, but it didn't this year. But this one is another one let's try this. And so we're constantly like pulling different levers to ultimately, put out the best product that we can, and having flexibility is a big part of that.
So yeah, so that's interesting. So from year to year, I mean, I guess that's as a hop-driven beer, that would be year to year based on the crop. And
if we just committed to one supplier and only had enough to cover that dry hop edition for the whole calendar year, then we would be stuck with it for the rest of the year. So why not have the ability to have a shift in plans? It gives us opportunity to adjust. And that's what we do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. I definitely have not exhausted everything I want to say, but I think I have to be conscious of time. Mike or Jude, is there anything you wanted to say before we move along to the final stage of the show? No,
just thanks for making Headhunter.
You guys, there was something about like who we would like to collaborate with.
Oh, yes. Who would you
All
like to collaborate with?
So, if anybody out there from Ghost Town wants to make beer with Fatheads, and let's make it happen, because I love some of the things these guys are doing. I've had an access to some of their beers, and I think it's pretty cutting edge. And then the other one would be Freem, which I might be able to make that happen. But I feel like Freem and Fatheads, like we're it's a different culture, but man, the quality of the beer I think is almost like it's the same vision,
Right on.
So,
At the after party, Ghost Town had a West Coast Pils on, and the favorite beer from one of our brewers in this festival at Firestone Walker was Freem's. Freem had a lager on, and I forget.
Yeah, unbelievable stuff. Yeah,
There was something specific about it that Adrian kept talking about, but that was his favorite beer of the fest. Josh came over too, and it's the first time I met Josh. But
he's a good dude.
Right on.
Ghost Town was at the Invitational.
there.
Wow. Okay. Do you?
I thought you were going to say Hop Butcher, Matt. It's like, wow, I'm about to get a surprise right here.
I thought he was going to say Is Was. He wanted to do a
He
Saison.
wants to make a Saison. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I'm joking, Matt.
That's interesting. So they were all right. So Ghost. So Matt, do you keep up with? How do you keep up with places like Ghost Town? Like they're from northern or Oakland or.
And also on top of that, what about Ghost Town? Like, what about Ghost Town? Do you
what
feel
about
like there's like a kinship?
Well, no, I mean, I think, I love Imperial IPA or Double IPA, and they've been killing it with that Nose Goblin. So, those are the kind of things where I take notice when guys win a medal, that's great. When guys win a medal again, that's amazing. When guys keep winning medals like they have, in the same category, they're doing something different.
Yeah, they swept World Beer Cup. They just swept it.
That's right. So when they're doing stuff like that, that's when a brewer like me needs to basically step back and go, they're not just doing traditional methods. There's something that's a little different, I think, right? So, me trying to get better, those are the kind of people I would like to surround myself, at least, to learn. And I think it goes both ways, that's fun.
Hell yeah.
Well,
The essence of collaboration.
yeah, I'll keep my ears open.
All right.
Before we get out, I did want to mention a little bit of somber news. Martin Cornell has passed away.
Oh no.
The beer historian, and I think this podcast more than some kind of dives into the history of beer, and I mean, between him and Ron Pattinson, I mean, there's like nobody else like those two. Martin has a beer coming out tomorrow, so by the time you hear this, it's guaranteed it'll be available on Stout and Porter. So if you're at all interested in kind of the history of beer specifically. Yeah, it's a book. Sorry.
Yeah, I said a beer.
Oh, I'm sorry. He's got a book coming out on Stout and Porter. Yeah. yeah, just a loss, but also I know, super fortunate to have met him, and I think it's great that people like him, as they were doing their work, were definitely thinking like kind of generationally and for the future, and setting up a lot of their work for people in the future to be able to kind of build on what they were doing. And I know a lot of the people who listen to this show are interested in beer on a deep level, sometimes on the history of beer, which is, to me, very fascinating. So if you aren't aware with Martin Cornell stuff, I mean, really, there was nobody like him, and Ron Pattinson. I mean, and if you're interested in where this stuff came from, I implore you, no matter what style you like, I bet it runs through English beer history. It's kind of like all modern beer kind of runs through England. So super cool stuff. A huge loss, but super grateful for the work he's done. And I just wanted to put it out there. So I was kind of bummed to hear that he'd passed, but
Rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace, and go raise a pint to him and pick up his book on Stout and Porter. I'm available tomorrow, which would be June 4th. So, yeah. With that, I think we're about to get out of here. Any final words that anyone else would like to say? No?
It's a great podcast. Great to be here.
Yeah.
Right on. Good talk.
Yeah. Yeah, joking aside, Matt, yeah, we're super pumped to have you on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
He
This is
probably
awesome.
thinks that we do this for everyone. I assure you that we do not.
Just Jude and Matt.
Just Jude and Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So thank you so much. Truly, I think you are making some of the best beer in the world, and it's great. So it's fun to evangelize for a beer. And for people to say, like, shut up about this beer. And then the one time we got it in Chicago and we were able to sell it and people got it, and where it's just like, oh, now I understand now.
Yeah.
So thanks just for making the beer and caring so much. And yeah, we love it. Thanks so much, Matt. Anything you would like to say, Matt?
Oh, hey, thanks so much for having me and, the high remarks for the brewery. And, yeah, we'll just keep, having fun and, maybe we can catch up down the road. Sounds fun.
All right, well,
Absolutely.
guaranteed I will be there at some point,
Yeah.
unless I disown my family and never go back to Philadelphia again, because
I feel like you would still go to Fatheads.
my kids know. They know. They don't even ask anymore.
Yeah.
They know we're going to end the day. We do it in 2 days. Day one ends in Middleborough Heights.
Yeah.
We stay at the same hotel. It's right down the street.
Mommy
They go to the
drives from
pool.
Mommy drives from the brewery to the hotel.
Yeah, no, they go to the pool,
And you
and
go to
I go to Fatheads, and I sit at the bar, and I see what they've got going on. And, yeah, we were going down, and it was Father's Day one time. And Margaret was like, how about for Father's Day we go to Fatheads? I was like, okay.
You're like, I love you.
Yeah, we took my dog, and she barfed on the patio out there. But it was great. All right, well, thanks
Yeah,
so
thank you
much,
so much.
everybody. And again, if you want to reach out to us, all the information is in the show notes. We'll be back next week. But until then, so long. Will I get this right? Ooh, I kind of did. All
I
right.
kind of did.
Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard, seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard, seen from again.